You're all here for one particular reason, am I right, Devils fans? And we're here to talk about none other than the big news that happened today, and that is we got to talk about Manscaped, the newest sponsor of the Devil's State of Mind podcast, as well as the Hockey Podcast Network. And when you use our promo code THPN, you get $20 off free shipping with code THPN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off free shipping with code THPN at Manscaped. It is a smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. And again, if you don't want your balls to look like Jacob Markstrom's face, then do me a favor and again, use promo code THPN to get 20% off all of your orders plus free shipping. Again, shout out to Manscaped, the official grooming partner of THPN, and as well as the Devil's State of Mind podcast. And what is going on, Devils fans? I know it's been a couple of weeks, but as always, it is your host, your best friend, your confidant, your number one source, Neil Villapiano, and welcome to a much anticipated episode of the Devil's State of Mind podcast right here on the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as SportsWire Radio, the best place to get everything you need to know about your much improved and very new looked New Jersey Devils. And as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check these episodes out, regardless of when they come out. You guys already know that I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I hope you're having a fantastic summer here. We're pretty much right in the middle of it, being the middle of July, and yeah, like I said before, I have been away for the last couple of weeks. You guys haven't been able to hear my lovely voice. Been on a vacation. Funny enough, this upcoming week, I'm going to be on yet another vacation, but I'm very much enjoying my summer and giving myself an opportunity to rest and recoup and get you guys ready for what should be a very exciting season coming up in just a few months of New Jersey Devils hockey. And of course, the Devil's State of Mind podcast. And we have a lot to get to. Today, we're going to be recapping the NHL draft from a few weeks ago. And of course, now that we are very much beyond the craziness that was free agency and also trades and everything, and everything's kind of died down. Now we can kind of, take a breath and just kind of look at everything that Tom Fitzgerald and the Devils have done to improve this team for a push to being a Stanley Cup champion this upcoming season. But before we get into that, as always, we got to shout out our lovely sponsors. You already know we got SeatGeek. Use my promo code Devil State of Mind to get $20 off your first purchase of any sporting or concert event of your choosing. And especially with a lot of sports, going on right now. You got the Olympics starting up in a little bit. You have obviously Major League Baseball second half of the season getting ready to commence. And of course, you've got the NFL and NHL seasons right around the corner here. It's coming up in just a couple of weeks. Training camp, especially for the NFL, just in a little bit. So again, if you want to get yourself a good deal here on tickets for any sporting or concert event, use my promo code Devil State of Mind to get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. As always, shout out to DraftKings Sportsbook. Use my promo code THPN. You bet $5, you get $150 in free bets instantly. So make sure you use that. Of course, one of our new sponsors, Manscaped. Use my promo code THPN to get an offer there. And Also, Devils fans, we have another new sponsor to welcome on in terms of supporting us here. And let me bring it up for you. We have BetterHelp that is going to be now a new sponsor for THPN as well as the Devil's State of Mind podcast. And you guys know from many episodes that I've done before how big I am in terms of promoting, taking care of one's mental health and having the opportunity to speak to a professional and really just have someone to be there for you. Yeah, obviously you may have friends and family that'll be there for you, but it's also important to have someone else who has no connection to you that could really listen to you and give you the advice and help that you really need. And BetterHelp is a great place to find a therapist that works for you. And if you are thinking of starting therapy, I highly recommend you use BetterHelp. Use our promo code THPN to get 10% off your first month using BetterHelp. So shout out to BetterHelp. This is one of those that I'm really excited that is a sponsor, and it's so big. Taking care of one's mental health and working on yourself is so important, and especially for me, this whole summer, I've really focused on taking care of my mental health. I'm in honestly a really good spot, and finding therapy and other things like that is so big, so important. So again, use our promo code THPN to get 10% off your first month using BetterHelp. Now, lastly here, and I know that it takes a while before we get into the episode, but I did want to make one other announcement that I made earlier this week on social media that I'm really excited to share with you guys. As of this week, I am now a new contributor to Pucks and Pitchforks over on Fansided. Shout out to Nick Villano. And of course, shout out specifically to Jersey Joe, who has been on this podcast before. Really good friend of mine, big Devils fan. He's also contributed here on Pucks and Pitchforks. He actually helped me a lot in terms of finding this opportunity and taking advantage of it and applying and, becoming a contributor. So I wanted to shout him out. Again, shout out to Nick Villano as well. Talk to him a little bit as he's also part of the Let's Go Devils podcast. They actually did a quick shout out of me in their most recent episode. So thank you guys so much for that. And make sure you go, of course, check out the Let's Go Devils podcast. It's a great podcast. A lot of you Devils fans at this point already know who they are, but nonetheless, just wanted to shout them out. And again, yeah, I'm really excited to start with Pucks and Pitchforks. Going to be, as I've done before with the Hockey Writers and Big Apple Hockey and Inside the Rink, just continue to give you guys another avenue to showcase, my content here covering the New Jersey Devils. And my first article will be out soon. So make sure you guys are following me on my social medias at Devil State on Twitter and also at Devil State of Mind on Instagram. Also, you can follow my personal Twitter at the NVP Show, as well as NVPQB11 over on Instagram. So again, really excited to get underway with Pucks and Pitchforks. So yeah, I really just wanted to share all of that. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let us dive into this episode. And as always, Devils fans, we have a bunch to get to here on the Devil's State of Mind podcast. So let's not waste any more time and get rolling. And we'll get rolling and drop the puck with we are going to recap the NHL draft and see what the New Jersey Devils did in terms of bringing in new young talent that continues to make this a very strong prospect pool for this New Jersey Devils team. The big question was obviously going to be who the Devils were going to take with the 10th overall pick. Were they going to trade the 10th overall pick? There was a lot of speculation going into it, but in the end, the Devils decided to use the number 10 overall pick to draft yet another talented prospect, and they went with one of the best defensive prospects in this draft, defenseman Anton Saleyev. He is a left-handed defenseman currently playing for Torpedo Nizhny Novgorod. I hope I said that right. I feel like I botched that completely. And knowing my good buddy Jersey Joe, he's going to definitely tell me that I said that wrong. 17 years of age, so he's actually one of the youngest players in this draft. 6'7", 211-pound defenseman. Basically, the way that I looked at it as this is the replacement, finally, for our man Shakir Mukhamadullin, who the Devils traded in the Timo Meier trade 2 seasons ago. So they finally now have another big left-handed shooting defenseman, and of course it does kind of replace Kevin Ball as well. So yeah, Anton Saleyev is the newest big defenseman. And a couple of quick quotes from NHL scouts on Saleyev. Elite size and skating. He's dynamite, has a huge, huge upside. And the comparison, NHL comparison, is Victor Hedman. So honestly, I will gladly take that if he becomes the next Victor Hedman. So the Devils continuing to keep their defensive prospect pool strong. It seems like, from what a lot of experts said, that this was a really, really home run pick. I actually thought that this was going to be Sam Dickinson. I felt like that, I mean, it seemed like to me he was the guy, but I can't complain about Anton Saleyev. Very, very talented. Really excited to see what he can bring down the road here if and when he comes to the NHL. He's currently going to be playing over back in Russia, so he's not coming to North America anytime soon, but the Devils are not worrying about that at all. So yes, the Devils drafted left-handed shooting defenseman, big 6'7", 211-pound Anton Saleyev with a 10th overall pick. So welcome to the New Jersey Devils, Anton Saleyev. So let's get to the rest of this draft and see who else Tom Fitzgerald decided to go with. The next pick that the Devils had was pick number 49, and they drafted the number one goaltender in this draft, and that is Mikhail Yorgorov, a Russian goaltender who currently plays for the Omaha Lancers of the United States Hockey League. I think he also is going to be playing college hockey, but this is a super, super talented goaltender that, if he could work on fixing a couple of his things, being a little bit more athletic, could really be a legitimate start in the NHL long term. And the Devils looking at it as, and especially with some of the moves that they made earlier this offseason in terms of the goaltending, this is a guy that they can hope they can develop into a really talented guy. And of course, when you look at the success of guys like Igor Shesterkin and even to a lesser extent, Ilya Samsonov, and of course, Ilya Sorokin, the Devils are trying to keep that trend of drafting talented and hopefully developing talented Russian goaltenders. So Mikhail Yorgorov, who was rated the number one goaltender in this draft, gets picked by the Devils at pick number 49. Now, the next pick that the Devils had was at pick number 85, and they actually drafted somebody who at least their family has some New Jersey Devils ties, and they drafted right winger Kasper Pikkarainen with the 85th overall pick. He is currently playing for TPS, the under-20 team, which I think is in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken. Sweden, or actually, I think it's Finland. Let me correct myself. And for older Devils fans, Pikkarainen might actually sound somewhat familiar, as his dad actually played in the early 2010s for just a cup of coffee with the New Jersey Devils. So now his son gets to be drafted by the Devils here with the 85th overall pick. Now, just a couple of picks later, the Devils continue to draft some forwards, and I'm really happy that they actually started to go after some wingers, because clearly the Devils have still a strong defensive prospect pool. They have a lot of centers, but they were definitely lacking in terms of wingers. So I think it was important to kind of keep that trend in this draft of drafting some wingers. The next guy they took was Herman Troff, a left winger currently playing for HV71, the under-20 team for J20 Nationale. So they draft another speedy scoring type winger, a guy who also is a big body guy. Big body. And I just want to make this clear to everybody. The Devils' overall height in terms of their draft picks together was about 6'2" and over 200 pounds. So the Devils focused on getting a lot of guys that were not only fast, but certainly physical, can play a two-way game. And I think that that's really, really important in terms of not just your farm system, but creating that identity and continuing to create that identity with the main team as well. And telling these players, like, this is why we drafted you. This is how we play. And we feel that you could be a part of that for sure. The next pick was pick number 139. The Devils drafted center Max Graham from the Kelowna Rockets of the WHL. I think number 139. A little bit smaller, but still a guy that possesses a very, very good two-way game. A guy that I would say is a guy that down the road projection wise is probably more of a bottom six guy, which is not a problem at all. You never know what could happen with these guys. I always love to use Jesper Bratt as a really good example. Sixth round pick, and now is an elite scoring winger who can put up 40 plus goals a year when he's really, really on his game. Now, the Devils actually went and drafted yet another goaltender to kind of, supplement and increase the Devils' talent in terms of between the pipes long term. They took goaltender Viti Luivara, who's currently playing for JYP, the under 20 team. Very, very talented goaltender in his own right. I would consider him to be more of a hybrid goaltender. He does play a little bit. From what I've watched, he kind of has a little bit of that blend of both the butterfly and stand-up position. So he's a little bit of a throwback, but nonetheless, a pretty talented guy, super, super young as well. And so the Devils decided to continue on with the trend of drafting, some European goaltenders. And I think that they definitely want to have a mix in terms of having North American and European netminders, because then you could really learn about how the position is really coached and developed from multiple parts of the world. Now, the last pick was actually an interesting one for me, because whenever you get to the end of the draft, you're really just kind of looking for best player available, especially when it comes to whatever board you're looking at. And the Devils took another, I believe he is Russian, if I'm not mistaken, another center, Matthias Medlovsky, who's currently playing for Bay Comio Draker, which is in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Pretty small frame overall, but one thing that stands out about him from what I was able to watch and some of the highlights I found was that he is tremendously talented when it comes to the faceoff dot. And I know that that's something that Tom Fitzgerald and when Lindy Rupp was here, how big they were on guys being really, really disciplined in the faceoff dot. And so this is a kid that if he can develop the rest of his game, along with continuing to get that much better at the faceoff dot, this could be a guy that long-term could be utilized in a multitude of different ways. And so that recaps the entire draft class for the 2014 New Jersey Devils. So let me know what you guys think here on YouTube. You guys can comment down below on this video, or you guys can just reach out to me on our social medias, what you guys think of the Devils 2024 draft class. When I look at this, obviously I could say Anton Saleyev would be my favorite pick, but I'm actually going to say that my favorite pick is pick number 49, taking Mikhail Yorgorov with that pick, the goaltender, because the Devils, for the second time in as many years, have taken the top goaltender in a draft. And if you remember a couple of years ago, they took Nico Daws, who was not only the best goaltender, but the best North American goaltender in that draft. And he still has the makings to be a guy long-term that could be a tremendously talented goaltender, developed well. And if you look at the situation now, we have Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen up with the big club. It gives Nico Daws a lot more opportunities to develop down in Utica and just get that much better with a ton of NHL experience already under his belt. So I look at Yorgorov. I'm excited to see what he can do long term. This is a guy that I think if the Devils can develop correctly, could be a really, really talented goaltender long term in the Devils organization. So again, I think overall, I give this draft class about a B plus. I've never been in terms of when I look at, draft classes and I look at players, I've never tried to come off as being like, I know exactly what these guys are all about. I kind of go based off of what a lot of other people are saying, what a lot of scouts and experts are saying. And I think overall, a lot of people can say the Devils had another really solid draft class that just kind of supplements and keeps the flow of consistent good talent in this farm system while this Devils team continues to try to compete for a Stanley Cup, which I think Tom Fitzgerald has always been really big about, just having not only a team that can win now, but also a team that can still continue to build and get better and better and better and continue to stay fairly young. With the Devils, I think their overall age at this point is about 26, 27, which is actually a little bit more on the older side considering some of the additions the Devils made this offseason, but they continue to stay fairly young in terms of the guys that they have. Also kind of sticking with prospects, at the time of this recording here on July 19th at around 1 o'clock, earlier this morning, the Devils announced that they signed Cam Squires, one of their draft picks from last year, to his entry-level contract. Had a great year. I believe he was playing with Spokane, or he was playing in junior hockey. Really, really good year. Honestly shows the makings of a guy that could really be a dangerous scorer long term. And the Devils certainly feel that this is a guy that could fit in with this team long term, and they sign him to a 3-year entry level contract. There's a good chance he's going to be playing with the Utica Comets this upcoming season. So yeah, Devils signed Cam Squires, and that right there is going to conclude our recap of the Devils 2024 NHL draft. And so now we shift over to talking about the Devils offseason in terms of trades and free agency, because the Devils, to no one's surprise, was super busy. And I mentioned it earlier this offseason that I was excited to see what Tom Fitzgerald was going to do. There were some moves that were not surprising, especially based off of reports. There were other moves that were very surprising, whether it's pleasant or not. And we will obviously discuss that. And of course, I want to know what you guys feel overall. And I've already had a chance to talk with all of you. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do this by level of importance. I'm going to do it based off of the order, based off of, order in terms of date, like when it happened and all that stuff. That's how I'm going to do it. So we'll start with the first big move of the offseason, and that was when the Devils traded John Marino and a 2024 fifth round pick to the Utah Hockey Club. I'm not going to get used to saying that. And they received a second round pick, which actually became Mikhail Yorgorov. So that's actually pretty interesting. And a 2025 second round pick. So I'll tell you right now that trade is not totally surprising, considering the fact who the Devils ended up getting in free agency in terms of that right defenseman shooting side. I think that with all the Brett Pesce rumors coming out, and then obviously it being confirmed that the Devils got Brett Pesce, that they were going to have to move somebody. And they already moved Kevin Ball, and it really didn't seem like they were going to move any. It seemed like it was most likely that John Marino on that right side was going to be the one move, and that's how it ends up being the case. And you look at Utah, they get some experience. They get a guy who can certainly make some plays. He's coming off a down year, and the Devils are hoping that Brett Pesce can be an improvement over John Marino in terms of just the overall defensive play. And so, yeah, kind of stinks, but at the same time, I think it was kind of necessary, and it was kind of expected as well. So John Marino heads off to the Utah Hockey Club, and I think only in like the third or fourth game will the Devils be facing off against Marino and Utah at the Rocks. So John Marino will quickly make his return to the Garden State early on this upcoming season. So that was the first move that Tom Fitzgerald made. The next one, to me personally, has a bit of mixed feelings, and I'll explain why. And that was the trade that kind of surprised everybody, including even the most, well-renowned reporters, because it wasn't talked about a lot. The Devils acquired forward Paul Cotter and a 2025 third-round pick from the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for Alexander Holtz and Akira Schmid. And that was tough to see right away because of how I feel about Alexander Holtz overall. I've said it before that it is really unfortunate that a combination of him not always getting the best opportunities and at times really struggling to get himself going in the NHL game. I hope that this is not one of those situations long term when we look back and say it was a bad move, especially with Alexander Holtz. I'm obviously pulling for him and hope he does well in Vegas, just like I feel about Yegor Sharangovich as well. And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate considering where the Devils drafted him in 2020 and the hype around him. And, who knows? Maybe he just isn't that good. Maybe the Devils fail. I think it's a combination of everything. I think the Devils at times failed in his development. I think there were times where Holtz wasn't aggressive enough and maybe just couldn't adapt to the NHL game. I was actually hopeful that he was going to get an opportunity to play under Sheldon Keefe and see what he could do, but that is not the case. And with Akira Schmid, look, we're always going to have that first round 2 years ago where he basically almost single-handedly carried the Devils from down 2-0 to winning and beating the Rangers at 7 games, having a tremendous playoff run. But he really regressed last season. And from the reports that we heard from his agent, It didn't seem like that he was necessarily thrilled with the way the Devils handled him. And if you look at what the Devils did in terms of not just the goaltending for the now, but then you look at some of the draft picks that they made this year, Akira Schmid was kind of the odd man out. And you look at it and you say you got Nico Dawes, Isaac Poulter is really rising up. Akira Schmid, I think the Devils were okay with moving on from him. And we were already told that Schmid probably is going to be the starter for Henderson, their AHL team. So he won't be in the NHL right away. For Alexander Holtz, I think there's a good chance that he plays with the club going into the season. And it'll be really interesting to see if he's on the team when Vegas makes their trip to New Jersey later on this year. But let's talk a little bit about Paul Cotter, because I have to be honest with you, I actually really like Paul Cotter. And I actually think that this was a pretty good move considering where the Devils are and what they need. So he's 24 years of age. He's a winger, 6'2", 213 pounds. Last year, he played in 76 of the 82 games for Vegas, 7 goals, 18 assists for 25 points. Considering where he played on that bottom six, honestly pretty good. And he's a fast guy. He actually does have some speed and he does have some skill. And Tom Fitzgerald said when they traded for him that they're banking on his potential. And this is a guy that not only could score, but the big thing, he could lay the body. And he's not afraid to step up either. He led the Vegas Golden Knights last year with 233 hits, which is well more than any Devils player had last year or even the year before that. This is a guy that is super, super aggressive. He also is a Stanley Cup champion. He was on the Vegas Golden Knights the year before when they won the Stanley Cup. And also, the Devils are not paying him a whole lot. He has a cap hit until the end of the 25-26 season at $775,000, which I don't know if that's his entry-level deal or it's just the small deal that he's on. But nonetheless, the Devils are not going to be paying him very much to be a guy that could really bring some energy, some speed, and the big thing, bringing some physicality. So again, Tom Fitzgerald sticking with being a more balanced team and developing a more balanced team. So overall, did it seem like an overpayment for a guy like Cotter? Yeah. But I think also the Devils saw an opportunity to move some guys that just need a fresh start, and that's what they did. We'll see how things play out. But Paul Cotter is now a New Jersey Devil. And again, I wish nothing but the best for both Alexander Holtz and Akira Schmid as they go over to the Sin City to play with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the Devils continued to upgrade the back end. They actually added some depth in a move that, again, nobody really saw coming, obviously. And the moves that you don't see coming sometimes end up being the biggest moves of the offseason, as the Devils once again made another trade with the Montreal Canadiens as they traded a 2026 fourth-round pick to Montreal in exchange for defenseman Jonathan Kovacevic, who seemed to be a fan favorite of a lot of people in Montreal. He is 27 years of age, a right-handed shooting defenseman. Again, sticking with the trend here, 6'5", 223 pounds. Played in 62 games last year, 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points in last year. And he has 1 year left on his contract. He'll be a free agent at the end of this year, only getting paid $767,000. Or a little bit closer to $767,000 for this upcoming year. This is a guy that, to me, replaces a Brendan Smith, who obviously moved on to play with the Dallas Stars. Wish him nothing but best. Thank goodness, in my opinion, that he's off the team. But Kovacevic comes in, continues to be yet another big, burly, physical defenseman. A guy who also has a good amount of skill when it comes to puck moving. This is a guy that you'll definitely see come in every now and then, be more the depth defenseman, and it doesn't hurt to have yet another big body on there. So it'll be really interesting to see what he brings. I think he's going to be wearing number 8. So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he will be the first Devils player since Will Butcher to wear number 8, I think. I may have to fact check myself at some point for that one. But yeah, honestly, another solid move. This is a guy that's a low risk, solid reward. And like I just mentioned, it just keeps the trend of Tom Fitzgerald making this team bigger and stronger, especially on the back end, which I think is a very, very important thing. So that was kind of a lot of the overall trades that the Devils made in terms of just, adding to this team. But now we get to the fun part, and that is, what did the Devils do in free agency? Now, before we get into what the Devils did, let's talk really quickly about what the Devils almost did. So going into Monday, July 1st, the Devils reportedly were very much in on Steven Stamkos and or Jonathan Marchessault. And until the very last minute, it looked like it was a done deal that Jonathan Marchessault would be a Devil. But the Nashville Predators swooped in and got both of them on long-term deals. Maybe not as much for Steven Stamkos in terms of term, but it was going to be interesting. And that was, I felt like if the Devils had gotten one of those two, that certainly would have solidified the top six. And it would have been crazy if the Devils ended up being the winners of the Steven Stamkos sweepstakes. And I'm not that upset that the Devils didn't get either one of those guys. Am I a little disappointed? Sure. But I also believe that there's an opportunity for the Devils, especially once the season gets underway, whether it's from their prospect pool or maybe even a trade down the road, closer maybe to the trade deadline, where the Devils could get somebody. And there's still options out there for trades. So it's not like the Devils, don't have any options. So let's just keep that in mind. But I just wanted to mention that because that would have blown the Devil. That would have put the Devils at one of the top winners of this free agency, which I still think they are. Honestly, I might be biased, but I still think that they are. But the big one was obviously the first one, and that is the Devils getting their top defenseman in the market, defenseman Brett Pesce. Yes, the Devils finally have a guy on the team with the last name Pesce. 6 years, $33 million at a $5.5 million AAV. He has a no-trade clause in the first 3 years, and then the final 3 years he has a modified no-trade clause. He is right-handed defenseman, 29 years of age, will be at the age of 30 in November, 6'3", 206 pounds. Last year played in 57 games, 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points. And he brings a lot of playoff experience, deep playoff experience, a guy who actually also has a little bit of experience playing alongside Dougie Hamilton when Dougie was in Carolina. And this is a guy that the Devils wanted right from the get-go, and they got him. And Tom Fitzgerald is very good at when he targets somebody, he finds a way to get it done, I would say about 95% of the time. So is the money a lot? Yeah, but this is free agency, and you're going to have to, unfortunately, many times, you're going to have to spend a lot more than you would like. But they bring in a guy who solidifies the top four, a guy who is really, really good on the penalty kill, could also bring a little bit of offense here, but mainly he is a guy that plays a physical game, plays a defensive game, really just makes the defense as a whole that much better, more experienced, more playoff ready is the point there. So honestly, very, very pumped up to get Brett Pesce. I'm glad the Devils were able to do that. So that was the first big move in terms of free agency. And then not too long after, again, not a surprise that the Devils got this guy. The Devils continuing to add on to a veteran defensive group as they added left-handed shooting defenseman Brendan Dillon as he comes over from the Winnipeg Jets via free agency. They signed him to a 3-year, $12 million deal with a $4 million AAV. He has a no-trade clause the first 2 years and then has a modified no-trade clause in his last year. 33 years of age, 6'4", 225 pounds, and is not afraid to not only lay the body, but to stand up and defend his teammates. He said that when he spoke to the media, that he wants the rest of the team to know that he has their back. And this is a guy who has a ton of playoff experience from not just the Jets, but also in his long time playing with the San Jose Sharks as well. This is a guy that definitely knows what it takes to win and brings in that veteran presence. And this is kind of what Tom Fitzgerald wanted to bring in more veteran leadership, wanted to make this team bigger, wanted to make this team stronger. I sound like a freaking broken record, but this is the truth. And I've had a lot of experience watching Brendan Dillon. I think this is a really, really solid pickup. And I also believe this, just honest, that if the Devils ended up getting Jonathan Marchessault, I don't think that Brendan Dillon becomes a Devil. I think that just would have made it harder. I think Brett Pesce was a done deal. I just don't think Brendan Dillon was 100%, but based off of what we were hearing, again, not a surprise. So in terms of who the Devils were projected to sign, they signed. They say, Jonathan Marchessault doesn't count because that was more of just like, came out of, right at the beginning of free agency. This wasn't this long dragged out thing where it just seemed like a done deal for him. But for Brendan Dillon and Brett Pesce, that's exactly, they got exactly who everybody expected them to get. So the Devils solidify that back end, get bigger, get more physical, and obviously gain a lot more experience. And so this is a more balanced defensive group for sure. Now, we get to, honestly, from not just a nostalgia standpoint, from what he actually brings, this is my favorite signing. This is honestly my favorite signing of the entire offseason. This gave Tom Fitzgerald to me an A+ in free agency, and that is bringing back a fan favorite from the 2017-18 playoff team. Stefan Noesen is back in New Jersey. This was one I did not expect. 3 years, $8.25 million, only a 2.75 average annual value, has a modified no trade clause in all 3 years. And for some Devils fans who might be a lot younger, maybe don't remember Noesen as much, he played for the Devils from 2016-17 to 18-19. He was a big, physical, brought a lot of energy, was a fan favorite, was not afraid to get into those grimy, tough areas, was not afraid to throw his body around. And I remember that big goal he scored in, I think it was game 3 of that first round series in 2017-18 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Although the Devils lost in 5, he had that big goal. He had that other big goal earlier in that year against Carolina, where Steve Cangelosi had that famous call, "It's Noesen, it's Noesen, it's Noesen." Like that, to me, like it's really exciting to bring him back. Because also, since he's been away, he's actually gotten even better than where he was at that time. And if you think about it, it's been 7 years since the last time he donned the Devils red and black. So he exchanges the Carolina red and black for Devils red and black. So he stays within the division. He's 31 years of age. As a winger, 6'1", 205 pounds, played in every game but one last year for Carolina in the regular season, 14 goals, 23 assists for 37 points. He does have a little bit of history in terms of fighting Eric Hulla, but I don't think they're going to be scrapping a lot during as teammates. Who knows? They might do it for fun, or they might do it because they're grinding it out in practice. But this is another guy that, as he quoted himself, he works his balls off. This is a guy that goes after everything. This is a perfect guy for the playoffs. This is a guy that brings that energy, as I mentioned before, brings that physicality, just makes this team more intimidating to play against. A team that's going to be much tougher to play against. A team that's going to bring much more energy on a night-to-night basis. I'm really excited Stefan Noesen is back. He's actually going to be rocking number 11 this year, and actually shouted out former Devil Brian Boyle, which is great because remember when Brian Boyle was on the team and obviously going through his battles with cancer, Brian Boyle became kind of like a rallying cry for that team, and Noesen still remembers that and wants to honor him in a way by wearing number 11. So no 23 for Stefan Noesen, but he'll be still the same Stefan Noesen that we all know and love for certain Devils fans. So really excited that Nose, as they call him, is back with the New Jersey Devils. Now, a couple of minor moves, one of them actually being kind of another reunion, and that was kind of interesting. But before that, Devils adding to their minor league team as they signed forward Mike Hardman to a 2-year, two-way contract at $1.55 million, $775,000 AAV. He is 6'2", 205 pounds. Last year for the Rockford Ice Dogs, the Chicago Blackhawks AHL affiliate, 22 goals, 15 assists, 37 points. Continuing to stick with the trend, he's a big, burly guy who definitely could bring some offense. A guy that wouldn't even be surprised if he got a little bit of action in the NHL, brings some of that, big body presence. He's not going to be wearing 86, that's for sure, considering the fact that's what he was wearing with the Chicago Blackhawks. But a pretty young guy, 25 years of age, is still very, very young. It's younger than I am. And yeah, I mean, again, a guy that I think we're going to see a lot more in the AHL, but certainly brings some NHL experience for sure. Now, in terms of adding yet another defenseman, they bring back a guy who was a Devils draft pick and was a prospect at one time for this Devils team. They bring back Colton White, who was most recently with the Anaheim Ducks. to a 2-year, two-way contract, also at $1.55 million, $775,000 AAV. He returns after being after 2 seasons away from New Jersey. He was with the Devils organization from 17-18 to 2021-22. So even Tom Fitzgerald has some experience with Colton White, 27 years of age, 6'1", 187 pounds. He played mostly last year with the San Diego Gulls, the Anaheim Ducks AHL affiliate. 53 games played, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. Straight up, just adding some depth and a little bit of veteran presence to the Utica Comets. And certainly a guy who obviously knows the Devils pretty well and obviously was playing for them for a bunch, does have some NHL experience as well. Just adding on to some depth in the overall defensive pool. I don't even know if you call him a prospect. You really don't. He's 27 and he's played a bunch. But Devils continuing with some reunions. They bring back an absolute fan favorite from just 2 seasons ago to, I guess, more or less solidify the top 6. They bring back the man, Tuna. Tomas Tatar is back in New Jersey on a 1-year, $1.8 million contract as he was really, really excited to come back to New Jersey. I think even Tom Fitzgerald would agree that not bringing him back was a mistake. This is a guy that definitely helped this team, develop and take that next step. And, he's definitely a guy that all Devils fans loved, honestly and truly. Last year played for both the Colorado Avalanche and the Seattle Kraken. Combined, he played 70 games, 9 goals, 15 points, 15 assists, 24 points. He's 33 now, 5'10", 173. You already know the detail. Tuda's back, and I'm really hoping that they bring back that line of Tatar, Nico Hischier, and Dawson Mercer, because that line, statistically speaking, was the second best line, analytically speaking, actually, of any line in the NHL 2 years ago. Those guys have tremendous chemistry. I would really love to see Sheldon Keefe at least give it another shot, because I think it could really, really be beneficial, because there's already chemistry there. They already know how to play with one another. And again, Tatar said he was super excited to come back. Love that Tom Fitzgerald decided to do this. And does it fully solidify the top 6? For now, I would say so. And I think that this means that he'll play in the top 6. Probably Palat will remain on the bottom 6, which I'm sure is not that big of a deal for Palat. And yeah, I'm just honestly really happy that Tatar is back, that Nason's back, bringing a little back in nostalgia, a little bit of reunion here. And this is a team that I think could really do some damage, honestly. This is a much more balanced team. This team reminds me a lot more of this Florida Panthers team that we saw win the Stanley Cup this year and be this good. A team that could beat you in a multitude of different ways. I spoke about it at the end of last season. This is what the Devils needed to do, and Tom Fitzgerald did exactly that, and that's what makes me really excited and hopeful for this team, especially once the playoffs get around, when the Devils get back into it, because I firmly believe that they're getting back to it. Last really move, again, kind of a minor move as well. The Devils signed Adam Beckman to a 1-year, two-way contract, $775,000. Earlier this year, he was acquired by the Devils in a trade with the Wild for Graham Clark. So Graham Clark, as mentioned before, now gets a new opportunity with the Minnesota Wild, where he may have a much better chance of playing. He is 23 years of age, 6'2", 183 pounds. Last year with the Iowa Wild, pretty good year actually. 51 games played, 19 goals, 14 assists for 33 points. Again, another guy that can bring some speed, bring some physicality, and certainly brings more depth, especially to the Utica Comets. And that overall is the Devils offseason, because I don't really expect them to make any other major moves unless something comes out of nowhere. And of course, we will bring you all the information if and when that actually happens. But to really kind of end this episode, I want to give you some quick takeaways of the offseason moves. Again, as I mentioned, a more balanced team, a more physical / playoff ready team, a team that resembles a lot more of that Florida Panthers team. And then you look at, I saw this stat and it was crazy. Paul Cotter and Brendan Dillon, hits combined last year, 474. That right there shows you exactly the type of team that Tom Fitzgerald wants to have. And this is going to be really interesting, especially with Sheldon Keefe's system, how these guys come together and what type of team we're going to see. I hope to see a team that could just beat you in a multitude of different ways, grind you out, and go from there. And as I mentioned before, that Tatar Hischier Mercer line, second best line in hockey at 22-23, minimum 200 minutes of time on ice. So overall, the team is bringing back some familiar faces. They're bringing in some new guys. They obviously got the goaltending position locked down. They've become a bigger, more physical team on the back end, and they're still a very talented offensive team when all healthy. And Tom Fitzgerald mentioned it. Jack Hughes will be ready for training camp. Dougie Hamilton will be ready. Timo Meyer will be ready. And in terms of Dawson Mercer, guys, give it time. It's not gonna. It's gonna be fine. He's gonna get a deal done, whether it's going to be this year or not. He already signed the qualifying offer, so he's going to be a free agent. He's going to be on this team this year regardless, and the Devils are going to get a deal done. Tom Fitzgerald is going to find a way, like he did with Timo Meyer, like he did with Jesper Bratt, like he's done with everybody. He will. But overall, Devils fans, I'm really excited about this team. I cannot wait for training camp. We are less than 85 days away from this season kicking off. I am so excited. And even though things have been very inconsistent, again, it is the offseason, not as much. I will continue to bring you guys content, whether it's on social media or here on the podcast. And as always, I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to check these episodes out. I greatly appreciate all of you. And as I mentioned before, super excited to get underway with Pucks and Pitchforks to bring you guys even more content here with yours truly, Neil Villapiano. But this is an exciting time for New Jersey Devils fans, and I can't wait for the season to get underway. And I'm just going to leave you with one question. Is it October yet?